So we're on Unit 5, Lecture 2. This is continuing on with human development. This is infancy and childhood, looking at cognitive and social development. Of course, cognitive, the way we think; social, how others sort of impact who we are, what our learning is, and everything else. So welcome to there we go. All right, so where we left off with the last one, is the idea of conservation. And remember, conservation is this idea of when you pour milk into or liquid or whatever. And I've got some videos on the website where you can sort of see this in action. But when the child takes a look at, you got 2 glasses of milk right here. You take 1 glass of milk right in front of her. You put it in one that's skinnier and taller. Then you ask her which one has more. She looks at this and she goes, well, that's more than that. This is more than this. That logically to her, that makes sense because you're just looking at things from a very simplistic way. You're just going height versus height. You're not going height times width plus height times width and compare the two. You're not doing that. So again, age to 5 to 7, this is where conservation starts to show up. And this is where children start to become a little less egocentric. Oh, not everything is the way that it is. There's nuances and all these other things, and they can start to relate to another person's perspective as they get out of the pre-operational stage. This is why 4 to 6-year-old kids respond negatively when they are wrong. 8 to 10-year-old kids react negatively when others are treated unfairly. And again, this is the theory of the mind, to start to see things from other people's perspective. It kind of takes a 7, 8, 9-year-old kid to do that. And again, the 5, 6, 7-year-old kid, they're not being jerks. They're just being 5, 6, and 7. That's what they are, which is why I can't teach them. So again, some other ideas of conservation that we talked about before. Now, again, once this conservation idea is complete, where change in shape is no longer necessarily means a change in quantity, you start to understand, oh, other things can be different yet still be the same. When I take the white bread and I put it in the toaster and it comes out as toast, it's the same piece of bread. It's now just different. It's not some sort of magical new thing. That one doesn't have to be exclusive of the other. Things can in fact change because, again, realize from 5, 6 to 7, not a lot has changed in your life. I've always been 6. I've always looked like this. This has always been my face as far as I can remember. Mommy's always looked like that. Dad's always looked like that. A family's always been this. So of course they're not too open to change in the pre-operational stage, but once they get to this, they can start to go, oh, okay, I start to get it. And this is also when mathematical transformation can start to take place. Because prior to this, if you've ever tried to teach a 6-year-old math, it can be very, very frustrating because they think in a very simplistic way and they can't sort of look at it from another perspective. For example, if you go, Tommy, what is 8 plus 4? He goes, okay, I got 8. So if I have 4 more, 9, 10, 11, 12, it's 12. Now I got 12. Okay, so then Tommy, 12 minus 8 would be, ooh, that's hard. I have to borrow 1. And you just flip it. You just reverse it. But again, it's hard for them to get that. And once they get this sort of concrete operational thing, it starts to make sense. And again, they can start to develop things like irony and realize that not everything has to be a certain way. You see the little cartoon down below there where the little boy goes, cut into a lot of slices, Mom, I'm really hungry. To a 5-year-old, that makes complete sense. Yes, more pieces of pizza make me more full. Yet to a 9-year-old, they go, it's the same size pizza. Of course, it's not going to be more pizza. And you can start to get that by 7 to 11, according to Piaget. All right, then 12 to adulthood, this is where we start abstract reasoning. This is where we can use logic, experience. Think of things abstractly, hypothetically. If I could live till the age of 200, what would that be like? What would the year 21 be like? And all these other things. How would we look back at this time? Of course, I'm never going to be there, and I'm not going to know it. But it doesn't mean I can't think about it. I've never been to space, but I can still think about space. I'm not going to win the lottery, but I can think about winning the lottery. Things don't have to be as they are in order for me to digest this. And this is what we get from 12 to adulthood. Now, again, critics of Piaget would go, well, first off, you only talk to a few kids. About 30 of them. And he came up with all of this. And also, do children really develop in stages? And these ages may vary. Is it like a video game? I got to complete this level to get to the next one. Some children gain object permanence as early as 3 months of age. It doesn't take 2 years. All right. Some feel the learning is more continuous than it is stage. Okay. And and some of us aren't going to hit these same stages, and some of us are going to be a little bit into formal operational while we're still doing operational, whatever. And again, he also didn't consider social environmental factors by just looking at a few kids. He didn't take parenting into the equation, socioeconomic standing into the equation, birth order into the equation. If I'm somebody with a lot of brothers and sisters that are older than me, I'm going to develop differently than the oldest child, where everything is sort of new. I'm getting different attention if I am the oldest child as opposed to the middle child or the youngest child. None of that's really factored in. Despite that, Piaget and his 4 stages of development, basically how we run elementary schools, as a result of that. Some more stuff there on the 4 stages if you'd like it broken down a little bit more for you. All right, some more on his educational theories right there. Some more stuff, and we get to attachment. Now, attachment is extraordinarily important. And the reason that attachment is so important is because when you are born, you are a blank slate. So everything in the world is defined as what it is. Okay. And attachment is do we tie ourselves with other people? And this is shown in young children because they seek closeness of the caregiver. And when the caregiver is not around, they have distress. We need love. We want warmth. We want to be responded to. We want stimulation. We want consistency. We want reliability. We had all this before we were born. When you're a little fetus in there, you had all the attention in the world. You moved, whatever. Mom was always with you. You were always warm. You were always fed. You were always taken care of. It was very, very consistent. But once you are born, if mom is not readily available or dad is readily available and you're not getting the attention that you need, it can lead to things like anxiety and depression, and make you a poorly attached adult. The unloved child will become the unloved adult because the child that learns they can't trust isn't suddenly going to learn to trust at 21. If you're not exposed to constant caregiving, some issues can develop. A real story in this is if you take a look at Romanian orphanages back in the end of the Cold War, where the Roman people were told not the Roman people, the Romanian people, it's a little bit further back and over in Italy, but the Romanian people were told have as many kids as possible because we're going to build a great army. And then suddenly that government collapses. And now I've got all these kids you told me to have, and you were going to support him, communist guy, and he's gone. So I can't handle these kids. So these Romanian orphanages just became overwhelmed. And you would have situations like this, 5, 6, 7 kids to a crib. And then you'd have one caregiver, one nurse who was in charge of 4, 5, 6 cribs. So she's got multiple kids. So she would get to the kids when she had time to get to the kids. No fault of her own. Good lady, maybe for the most part, let's assume. But she's going to get there when she has time to get there. So the kid sits there because they're hungry or they're hurt or they're lonely and they begin to cry and nobody shows up. They start to learn when I need someone, no one's there. And that becomes their reality. And as a result of this, they learn to not trust. Their brain has less size, decreased gray matter because of less size, decreased cortex activity, but an enlarged amygdala, alert to fear, and all these other things because they're not given this proper attention. Nothing in science proves that this cannot also be provided by fathers, single mother, single father, 2 moms, or 2 dads. There should be nothing in science. Let me correct this real quick, or that's going to bother me. I'll give you a perfect example of this is that I was a single father from my daughter being 2 to when she was 11, and I got remarried. Well, I guess, no, I take that back. I guess I got remarried when she was 8. So from 2 to 8, I'm a single father raising this kid. And prior to that, when I was with her mother and she would cry in the middle of the night, like a 3-month-old or a 4-month-old or a 5-month-old, I was the one who got up and fed her because I liked to. She was kind of funny. I enjoyed it. So I would go and take care of my daughter. And as a response, she learned at a very early age, when I need someone, this is the guy. This guy shows up. So that's the one that I need when I'm in fear, when I need these things. It's this guy. When I play, when I laugh, it's this guy. So she's got a very different relationship with me than she does her mother, and her mother actually gives her a bit of anxiety. And this is also, we can develop stranger anxiety because we're not used to those people. It's very normal for the little kid to sit on Santa's lap and cry. Why wouldn't they cry? Who is this stranger holding me, asking me what my wants and needs are? All right, doesn't make a lot of sense. So by the time you're 8 months and you start to crawl, I want my parents because I can trust my parents, and I start to distinguish between their faces and other faces. Harlow did a study in the 1950s, which is really a tragic study. And you should look at the videos that are on the website about this, where monkeys were raised by a surrogate mother. It was a wired monkey with a cloth and a bottle, and that's what they learned. You had this monkey right here with the bottle inside, and then the monkey would go and learn, I hold on to mom, and you use your grasping, your rooting, and your sucking, and the monkey goes, well, that's mom. Well, then they give the monkey a choice. Do you want this mom who only gives you security, or do you want this mom who gives you food? And when given the choice between the two, the monkey would go to the cloth mom because they wanted the security. But they would go over to the food when the food became a panging need. But once they got their food, they would go back. They would go back to the cloth mother after this feeding occurred. And as adults, and again, Harlow would go, and this is okay because they got all the mother love that they needed. No, they didn't, because they learned how to touch things. They didn't learn how to be touched. They didn't learn how to interact. They were kept in a room where they could see other monkeys. They could hear other monkeys. They could smell other monkeys. They couldn't touch other monkeys. And as a result, as adults, they'd sit alone. They'd clutch themselves. They'd rock back and forth. They showed signs of depression, including self-mutilation, self-harm, pulling out their fur, pulling out their nails, and very inappropriate social behavior because, again, they didn't know how to interact. And those that became mothers ignored their kids. Why not? I was ignored as a kid. They didn't learn how to mother. So again, to sit there and go, oh, they got all the mother love they need is complete crap. Later studies would only give chicken wired mother with a blast of air to discourage them from hanging on. So I don't even give them the cloth. I just give them the water, the wired mother, and the food. And this is all they got, which is a terrible upbringing. It's a terrible mother. But since that's all you know, you don't know that it's a bad mother. You think that's normal. And then they crank it up a notch. And every time you grabbed hold of that mother, they would blast air at you. And then the monkey would hold on harder, because even though this was an abusive, non-loving mother, this bad attention was better than no attention. And they would aggressively fight for it. And again, abusive behavior, care and love. When we get yelled at by our parents, if you're a kid and all your parents ever did was yell at you, and then they stop yelling at you, you're like, oh my God, they stopped loving me. Because that's what you equated to love. That's what you equate to caring. And it's exactly what's happening to these monkeys. It's all you know from an early age. Children also prefer a safe haven with their parents, later replaced with friends and then their own partner in life. But this is why everything that you do with that kid from 0 to 5 is oh so important, because that becomes their reality for a lifetime. And this is what's known as a critical period, this optimal period shortly after birth, when your exposure to the world is the world as you know it. And is the world predictable? Is the world unpredictable? Is the world loving, or do I got to figure it out on my own? You learn all of this. What is a mom? What is a dad? What is a family? What is my purpose? We learn all of this very early on. Animals get imprinted early on. Konrad Lorenz, who studied under the Nazis and blah, 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 but Lorenz did this thing with geese, where these geese, he picked these geese up and he sort of took them, these geese eggs were left out and the mother was dead. So he took the eggs back, put them in an incubator, eggs hatched, and suddenly these little geese look at him and they go, well, your mom, because that's all they knew. This guy with this guy with gray hair and a beard, that's what a mom is. Okay, and they imprinted him as being mom. Now, since they got care and they got loving and everything else, unlike Harlow's monkeys, they did become good mothers because they did learn how to care, even though this mom here could not fly and could not swim the way that they did. The love and the caring and whatnot, that was passed on to other generations. And to sort of see this thing right here, it's a Mary Ainsworth did a study called the Strange Situation Study. And the Strange Situation, you took a look at mothers and you look at their relationship with their infants. Because again, when you go home from the hospital with a kid, all they care about is, can you figure out a car seat? That's pretty much it. So we don't really know what happens when you get home. So Ainsworth back in the 70s asked, can I follow you home? Not like in a creepy way, but can I come home and check on how you're raising the kids? And she basically saw there were two types of mothers. There were sensitive, responsive mothers, and this is about 3/4 of them. These are mothers that when the baby cried, they gave attention to the kid at a relatively quick way, within a few minutes. They would stop what they were doing, take care of the kid, whatnot. The insensitive, unresponsive mothers, which is about 1/4 of them, these attended to their babies when they felt like it. They would ignore the baby, let the baby cry themselves out, whatever. I don't have time for you right now. I'll get to you when I can get to you. Okay, so they look at these. So she basically categorized these mothers into these two sort of, did you come from a secure upbringing or from an insecure upbringing? After their first year, mothers and children underwent a series of episodes that involved the mother leaving, okay, which was called a strange situation. And the strange situation was basically, I go into a room with the child, and the child is with another caregiver, and there are toys there. And then I leave. How does the child respond? How does the child respond to the mother leaving? And what they discovered is about 65% of children, which included all the children that were raised by sensitive, responsive mothers, confidently explored the environment and fine with the stranger as long as the parent was there. But when the parent was gone, they were distressed that the parent was gone. But when the parent returned, they were pleased and they were happy. That's a secure attachment. Okay, I'm put in a strange situation. I'm okay as long as mom's here. Mom leaves, I'm not okay. Mom comes back, I'm secure. And that means that you have a securely, and that's not overtly dependent, it just means that you're securely attached to your mother. Now, insecure avoidant attachment, which was about 25% of them, they were afraid of the stranger. They didn't want to explore. They cried and were upset when the parent was there, but they also cried and upset when the parent returned. Like, how could you leave me here? Why would you go? Why are you back? Can I trust you to be back? These tended to be from mothers who were over obsessive with their child. Okay, so these were the mothers that back here you would call them sensitive, responsive mothers, but these were the always around helicopter mothers, always around, always there, always taking care of needs. So the child became so dependent on that mother that when the mother left, they freaked out. How can I survive without her? And then about 10% were insecure, anxious, ambivalent. These were fine with the stranger, did not care if the parent was there. When the parent came back, really weren't that interested in, because they really sort of learned to not depend on love from the parent. Okay, so these tended to be from mothers who ignored their children in these particular cases. All very, very sad. Both of those cases, very, very sad. So you want the secure attachment. You want the kid to be a little bit upset when you go and a little bit happy when you come back, because that's normal for being 2 or 3. Now, again, when the kid's 6 or 7 and they're acting that way, a little bit of a problem. But for a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, this is 1, 2, 3. This is exactly normal behavior. Nothing wrong with that. Now, again, go back to Harlow's monkeys. Those that were raised by artificial mothers were placed in strange situations without the surrogate mother, without the little wired cloth mother. And they became very terror-stricken when that bad mom wasn't around. So an abusive parent that is always around can have a negative impact. It's about the quality of parenting, not just the quantity. Because if you get a big quantity of bad parenting, that's really bad for you. You'd much rather have a little bit of a quantity of quality parenting. Both parents working, it's fine. Childhood adversity actually increases odds for depression, anxiety, substance abuse, impaired cognitive ability, loss of impulse control, impaired emotional regulation, antisocial behavior, all of this. Because what you learn as a child is that this is normal. To be anxious about my parents being here or being gone I'm learning that anxiety is normal, you know, to not feel, not be able to feel, to not be able to express myself. At the age of 3, I'm learning never to express myself. And then when you have a kid that develops into a bully, and bullying is disproportionately from single mothers. You know, if you're raised by a single mother, and by the way, also single fathers as well. All right, so let's not be bashing mothers here, but disproportionately from single parent households. Poor, less availability to give attention, correction. The kid's not getting a lot of attention, so they got to get it from other areas. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and correct this right here. It shouldn't be from single moms, it should be from single parents, because that looks like it's very disparaging to mothers. Okay, let me correct that. Because again, as a guy who was a single father, you know, of course, you're going to have that possible correction as well. There's 3 types of bullies. One is the anxious, isolated kid with poor social skills. He's never learned to be with other people. You bully out of frustration. You're not getting attention. This will get me attention. And usually these people grow out of it. The second type of bully is a confident, unempathetic, socially intelligent person. This is person that's usually a sociopath down the road, because this is also a kid that's tough to punish, because they don't look at punishment as such a bad thing. Their frontal lobe doesn't register it. And bullies, and the third type of bully is the bully that learns it. You know, you get put down, you get made fun of by your parents or your older brothers and sisters, and you're going to do that at school. Your parent says, hey, if you don't clean your room, I'm going to beat the hell out of you. How do I get other people to do what I want them to do? I threaten to beat the hell out of them. Good idea. Let me use that in the playground. They take it on. All right. So again, a lot of times it's a monkey see, monkey do sort of thing that we have. So secure attachment basically predicts our social competence. What's our trust? Do we trust others? Is the world predictable and trustworthy? If I cry, will someone be here within a relatively predictable amount of time to take care of it? They don't have to be there right away, because to be there right away, that's not good either. If I just go, and before I finish the word ouch, I just go out, and before I even get to the ch, and my mom said, are you okay? Are you okay? That's bad too. You know, you got to let the kid bump his head. Sometimes you got to let the kid touch the hot pot, because you can say no, no, no all the time, but sometimes they got to learn for themselves. Now, you don't take their hand and shove it on the pot. You don't do that. But, you know, you got to have a good balance there, because the love become the loving. The trusted become the trusting. Majority of studies find that there is a direct correlation between a secure and happy childhood and a happy adulthood. Most happy adults had happy childhoods. And those who did not have happy childhoods need to work on that when they're adults and learn, what was my fault? What was I responsible for? And all of these other things. Because when we're deprived of attachment, the unloved becomes the unloving. You know, it's a sense of normal in the world. The world's not predictable. I can't trust the world. The world is abusive. And we don't even look at it as abuse. The world beats me up. That's what the world does. We don't realize that that's wrong. And that's why someone who is abused at a young age tends to grow up and be the abuser, because to them, that's normal behavior. Those born in lower socioeconomic status by the age of 5 have a thinner cortex, which includes the prefrontal, leads to poor working memory, emotional regulation, and impulse control. Because again, usually when you're from a lower socioeconomic status, both your parents are working, both your parents are stressed about work. So then they're so stressed and working so hard at work, by the time they get home, they're not really taking care of the kid as much as they want to, and as much as they wish they could. They're not able to go on vacations and things like that. This blunts the development of the hippocampus, memory, the prefrontal cortex, which is emotional regulation and predicting others, and it increases the development of the amygdala, fear. Lower metabolism rates, because you got a fattier food diet, because they don't have time to make the great food. More likely born into environmental toxins, lead in the water, dangerous schools, higher crime rates, because you can't afford to live in a nice neighborhood. Now, again, does daycare affect attachment? Has all to do with the quality of the daycare. If you put your kid in a great daycare, if you went to a great daycare as a kid, your attachment became better, because you learned to trust your parents. Oh, they leave me with these people. They leave me in a safe place, and I can predict that they'll come back. They leave, they come back. It's great for parents to leave their kid and come back, because then you learn that, you know, object permanence and everything else there. You can trust them. They leave me in a good situation. They leave me with professionals. They leave me in a place where I'm not going to get hurt. That's fine. Now you put your kid in a bad daycare. You put your kid in some lady who's 78 and there's 23 kids running around fighting over one box of honeycombs. That's not a good experience for a kid, and as a result, it's going to lead to anxiety. I can't trust when my parent leaves. I can't trust these other places. I'm developing being surrounded by bad. And this is why the kids are at this time also developing a concept of themselves, a sense of my own identity, my personal worth. We start to get this by about 18 months of age. We start to realize that about 18 months when we look into the mirror, that's somebody else. 6-month-old baby, that's another baby. I'm gonna scream at it. But when you're a little kid, here's what they do is to see if a kid has a sense of self. What you do is you put them in front of a mirror, and then you go, look at the baby in the mirror, and they go, oh, baby. And then you take the mirror away, and you go, oh, let me see your nose, and you take a little piece of cloth. The cloth has some paint on it, and with the cloth, go, oh, let me wipe your nose, but it actually leaves paint on their nose, and then you show them the mirror again. Then the question goes, do they touch the mirror? Or do they touch their nose? If I touch the mirror, I think that's another kid. If I touch my nose, I realize that pain is now on me. And that's the sort of concept of the self. And once I get that and I start to realize that I'm a person, just like everybody else is a person, I'm not just watching this play. You start to develop this sense of who you are and what you are. And parents can get pulled between the ideas of being over-involved and giving the child too much independence. It's all weird. The child at that time has a concept of themselves. Now, let's talk about parenting real quick, because there's 4 different types of parenting. And I think all of us have experienced a little of all of these. Not too often does a parent get just put into one. Sometimes moods, whatever, it can result in various things. But let's go with 4 types of parenting. First type of parenting is what's called an authoritarian family. An authoritarian parenting family, the 4 types of parenting. The first one, authoritarian. These parents have unquestioned authority. This is my house. These are my rules. You're going to do what I say. Why? Because I said so. Because I said so is a very, very prevalent phrase in the authoritarian family. Now, does that mean that every parent who's ever said, because I said so, is an authoritarian? No. You can be any type of parent and say, because I said so, just because you're tired of explaining yourselves. All right. So a lot of times they do not have to explain their demands. Don't interrupt me. I'm talking. A lot of times this is more likely to use physical punishment because you're not sitting down, you're not explaining. A lot of times the parents grew up in this and they go, well, it worked for me, it's fine. Some of them believe that the world's a tough place. So a lot of times people from lower socioeconomic standings, not all the time, but a lot of times from lower socioeconomic standings are going, the world's tough out there. And I got to prepare my child. I got to thicken their skin for that tough world. You better get used to it. But you can even be from a very wealthy family, very competitive family, who also face, to get to that high level, you also have to fight and claw for everything. And the world's tough and no one's going to be there to take care of you. So I'm going to show you how it's tough at the age of 5. Because again, when you tell a 5-year-old boy and he breaks his little basketball hoop and you say, stop crying, be a man, he's 5. Sometimes you got to sit, you got to talk, you got to explain these particular things. Now, the good news for an authoritarian family, if you're raised in an authoritarian family, you have respect for authority, rules, regulations. You tend to use the phrases, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, a lot. It's almost second nature. So the great thing about a kid who's raised in an authoritarian family, when they get the job at Chick-fil-A and they say mop the floor, they'll go, okay, yes, sir, and they'll follow the rules. That's pretty good. There's nothing too wrong with that. Okay, that's pretty good. But on the other side of the equation, the bad news is there's underlying resentment, very little happiness. Once these kids are on their own, some people will go, you go off to college and just go crazy. It's not that you go crazy. It's that you know how to follow rules. You don't know how to make rules. No one's here to tell me to do my homework. No one's here to tell me to study for my test. No one's here to tell me that it's time to eat, what to eat. So you're great at following rules and following guidance and following boundaries. You don't know how to set your boundaries. because it's always been done for you. It's always been done for you. That's an authoritarian family. On the extreme other side of the perspective, the opposite side of that coin, is the permissive indulgent family, where parents attempt to guide, but they give in to the children's desire. The children set the agenda. The children have the final say. You know, I like to put this to the idea of, what if your parents every year were up for an election, and in order to continue to be your parents, you could vote for them. You and your brothers and sisters, or if you're the only child, just you, would vote whether or not these parents continue to be your parents. So the only way that they could continue to be your parents is to give you whatever you wanted. You know, that's the only way they could keep the job. I want to go to Disney World for spring break. Can't go to Disney World. We can't afford Disney World. I'm going to vote for New. Okay, fine. We'll put it on a credit card. And you can't afford it. You're going to give it to them. You're going to give it to them. You're going to give them whatever they want, because that you want to keep the job. All right. Now, you understand why our country is $21 trillion in debt? We elect our parents. We elect our parents. The only way politicians keep their job is if they do what we want them to do. I don't want to wear a mask. There will be no mask. Everyone should wear a mask. We'll have masks. You know, they're not just making the right decisions. You know, something to be said for dictatorships. You know, trains run on time. Highways get built. But you have no rights as a human. But when you give the humans all the rights, and they don't know what's good for them, because I read on the internet, so I want this, and if you're not going to give me this, I'm going to vote for new parents. Your big concern is that the children like you. And that's really damaging. And I think all of us have seen kids raised in a permissive, indulgent household. And part of us thinks, geez, I wish I could be raised in this. But part of us also thinks, this kid's kind of a jerk. Now I understand why, you know? So again, the good news is the child feels important. But the bad news is, once this kid leaves the nest, the special treatment stops. The child doesn't know when to say no. He doesn't know. You give a 7-year-old kid a smartphone with access to everything on the internet. You decide when you put it away, Johnny. Well, hell, he's going to become addicted to porn or join ISIS. You know, he doesn't know to say no. I mean, you know, if you're watching like a horror movie where people are getting cut up and you see your 5-year-old little brother walk through, you go, oh, get out of here, get out of here, get out. Because he's not ready for it. He's not ready for it. Someone's got to tell us no. When you give the kid at the age of 11 an Xbox in their room and say, oh, you play as much as you want, they don't know how to say no. Sometimes we need someone to say no. Think of how many times, you know, weekend, somebody gives you a call. It's like, hey, what's going on? Hey, we're going to do this, that, and the other. You want to go? I don't know, let me ask my parents. And then you call, you go, hey, mom, hey, dad, they want to do this. Can I go? No? Yeah, they won't let me go. God, I hate them. But then you get off the phone, you're like, oh, thank goodness. Because you can't tell your friends no, but you can blame it on your parents. We need that. And also, when parents overpraise their kids, that hinders the success. I mean, when you don't praise your kid at all, that can hinder their success. When you're accurate, that helps their success. But when you overstate, oh no, you're smart. Oh, the teacher was wrong. Oh no, you know what you're doing. You're special. You're everything else. Well, not every kid's special. You know, oh, you're the best player out there. You're probably not. And they're like, I am the best player, so I don't need to practice any harder. I am smarter than the teacher, so I don't need to study. The teacher's just wrong. When you overpraise the kid, when you give them stuff that's not deserved, that's also bad. You got to be accurate. You know, hey, Johnny, you strike out every time in baseball. You ever thought about football? Sometimes you got to move them to something else. Your child is not going to be the greatest at everything. And you got to be okay with that. You got to be all right with that. And a lot of parents have a problem with that. So again, good news, child feels important. Bad news, all that other stuff. All right. Now, also, a kid that gets to do a lot of stuff is because their parents are uninvolved. They're neglecting. Parents are eccentric. They're uncommitted to their roles as a parent. They'll go, hey, here's a credit card. Go buy your own dinner, whatever. And a lot of us think, hey, that'd be great. I wish I had a credit card. Go buy my own dinner. They voice no expectations. Here, I don't have time to give you a ride everywhere. Here's a new car. Okay. And then they feel good as a parent because, hey, I gave the kid a car. What more do you want? The kid wants time. Don't want the car, they want time. These parents ignore the young people in the house. Many material goods because they don't want to actually spend time. Don't have time to spend time. I got to work. I got to work. I got to work. And you take a look at the normal brain of a child, and this is a child of extreme neglect because they're just looking for attention. They're thriving for attention, but the parent's not giving them attention. So again, good news, not much. Child learns to be self-sufficient. They can heat up a hot pocket, feed themselves. But the bad news is there's no role model for right or wrong. You're desperate for any type of attention. Think of the rich kid who steals. The rich kid who has credit cards in his pocket, the parents pay for, it's all the money he needs, all the things that he needs, goes to Macy's, puts stuff in a bag to get it for free. Why? Because deep down inside, a lot of times he wants to get caught because he's going to get caught. He's going to get yelled at. But at least they're speaking to me. At least they're paying attention to me, and bad attention is better than no attention. That's uninvolved, neglectful parenting. Last type of parenting we need to talk about is authoritative. Now, notice I'm saying authoritative democratic, not authoritarian, authoritative. This is where expectations are clear, consistent, have some levels of flexibility. This is where some negotiation takes place. Because the easiest thing in the world for a parent to say is yes. Yes is easy. Can I spend the weekend at my friends? Yes. Get out of my face. I don't have to smell you. I don't have to see you. I don't have to give you food. Yes, go ahead. Easy. But I also know that if that kid spends a weekend with their friends, they're not going to get any sleep. They're not going to do any of their homework. They're going to be wasted for the next week of school because their sleeping schedule is going to be off. That's not good. So I'll go, no, you can't spend the weekend. You can spend Friday or Saturday, but you can't do both. Okay, what do I want? Friday or after they was already at school. So I had to go Saturday. It could be all day Saturday and come over. So I want to go Saturday. Okay, fine, Saturday. So again, the child learns that they can't have everything and to choose between what is good and what is wrong. So the parents are demanding and responsive. If I tell my kids, I go, well, you guys want hamburgers or hot dogs for dinner? They go, we want hamburgers. Fine, I'll make hamburgers. Yeah, we get to choose what we want to eat. Not really. I'm making hamburgers or hot dogs. I'm not making a souffle. I'm not making a lasagna. I'm making hamburgers or hot dogs. It's basically the same thing, but they get the sense that they have choice. This right here, this is an example of what I learned. Again, when I got married, I was a blended family. And I had the one daughter, and then suddenly I got these 6 other kids. So I got 7 total kids. 5 in the house at the same time. And what I noticed was that food was just disappearing at an extraordinary rate. When it was just me and my daughter, a pack of Oreos would last forever. Family box of cereal lasted for a long time, but these locusts just would take food and hide it like little squirrels, putting in cereal in baggies and hiding it in their bed. It was unbelievable. So food was just disappearing. So then what I instituted was this thing called the snack draft. And the snack draft is where Sundays I would buy snacks and they would all get out their shoe boxes. And then what would happen is everybody got a draft. You got a choice. So you go first, second, third, fourth, fifth, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and you'd have various rounds. And you'd fill up your box. And in that box, you'd have 8, 9, 10 snacks for the week. If you want to eat them all today, you eat them all today. But once they're gone, they're gone. And plus, you also choose which snacks you get. And you could trade them and do all these other things. So ultimately, the kids felt they were getting what they wanted. They got what snacks they wanted. And they were the ones who decided when they ate. It wasn't snack time or anything else like that. They couldn't just eat everything. There was a limitation. So they felt empowered by it. Now, again, ultimately, who got what they wanted? I did. Because I was only going to spend this much on snacks. Okay, and I was only going to buy these types of snacks. So again, the goal here is as the child becomes older, they learn to basically set their own limits. It's not given to them too soon where here's the phone, you can put everything you want. No, there's going to be some limits on this. There's going to be some limits on times and everything else. So you got to take advantage of these signs and those times. You don't have this unbelievable free-for-all. So studies have basically shown that children from authoritative democratic homes are more confident in their values and goals because of an establishment of limits. And they're part of establishing the limits. They're responding with warmth and support. Now, again, have I lost my temper with my children? Yes. Have I raised my voice? Yes. Have I given them a certain tone? Absolutely, which sounds very authoritarian. But this is usually followed by a debriefing about an hour or two later when I've calmed down, when they've calmed down. I can go, okay, you understand why that upset me. You understand what's going on here. So the child assumes responsibility gradually. They're not denied the right as they are an authoritarian. It's not given too soon, so it's permissive. Child is more likely to identify with the parent because the child is more likely talking to the parent, because the child is more likely working out solutions to scenarios with the parents. They're not treated as incompetent as they are an authoritarian, or indifferent as uninvolved, and they don't get everything as they are in a permissive. Parents present a model of responsible independence, and ultimately that's what you're looking for. Now, parents are not solely responsible for the way the child turns out, or even the type of parenting that the child gets. I don't treat all my children the same, because not all of my children are the same person. You know, some of my kids, I got to stay a little bit more up on their grades. Some of my kids, it's like, hey, that's your grade card. Great, fantastic. All right. So again, some children are more difficult. So as a result, they're going to get a different type of parenting. And parents, as we talked about before, only equate to about 10% of personality development amongst children. And culture can have a lot to do with this as well. It's not just within the family, it's within that family's culture. If you grow up in an individualistic culture, it's all about independence, competition, rights of the individual. Mothers are going to speak louder, protect or play music louder, fear that the child may be bored. I got to keep my child excited. I got to keep them signed up for all these different things. They could be bored. Games are about winning. It's about individual achievements. I got to get a trophy. I got to get recognized. I got to get the star on the helmet. And when you look at this picture over here, the fish that's out front, he's a leader in an individualistic culture. But if you're from a collectivist culture, where it's about interdependence, harmony, fitting in, mothers tend to soothe the child and surround the child with adults. Look at all these examples. It takes a village to raise a child. Games are about teams, cooperation, sharing, fitting in, sharing in the win, also sharing in the loss, not isolating, not picking out one person as a scapegoat. The fish out front, in the collectivist culture, they see the fish out front. Well, that fish is an outcast. These guys don't like that fish. It's not good to be the fish out front. That's a bad thing if you're from a collectivist culture. Socioeconomic input. If you're from a lower socioeconomic class, you're more likely to be authoritarian or neglecting, because you're teaching how to survive in the tough world. It's a tough world out there, Johnny. You gotta suck it up, stand your ground, keep your pride. Don't let others deter you. You're more likely to use sarcasm, tough love, because you're going to get that out there. I'm going to toughen you up. I'm going to thicken your skin so you can handle it at the next level. Lower socioeconomic, higher socioeconomic, more likely authoritative or permissive. Because again, the idea of the child's success is a given. I've got money, kid's going to go to college, they're going to be a success. So it's about exploring the world. More concerned about your psychological well-being. Are you being fulfilled? Versus the lower socioeconomic, man, I gotta make sure you survive. Make sure you don't end up like this. Make sure your life is better. Higher socioeconomic, your life's already good. It's going to maintain. That's going to affect the parenting style as well. Okay, so all those things get involved. So that wraps up lecture 2 of section 5. Lecture 2 of section 5.